Hi everyone, and welcome to another Stump Jen stream. But of course, today it's more a stump an awful lot of us because with me today I have Matt, almost a doctor, the ever wonderful Nervardia, and Chadwick Hall, who's absolutely awesome as well. And we've also got Sam, who's just had to nip out for a few seconds, but we'll be back momentarily.
Yeah, not gone yet. Hello.
Not gone yet. Jeez, Sam.
All talk.
So all talk and no play. What do your partners think of you? So, if you guys have got any questions for us, there's an awful lot of science sitting here in the chat who ready to try and be stumped by you guys. Why don't we start by having a chat about Arecibo?
Oh,
Arecibo? Well, you've already stumped me now.
Heartbreaking.
You don't know what Arecibo is? It's heartbreaking.
Oh my god, is it ever?
Yeah, Arecibo.
Can I take this one?
Yeah, go, Chad, please.
Okay. Arecibo is a deep space observatory that we have based in Puerto Rico. Technically, it hasn't been decommissioned yet, but we got the news today that it will be.
Yeah.
And it was one of the few installations we had on Earth that could actually do radar imaging of near-Earth asteroids for predicting. Yeah.
Impact.
So we lost a powerful tool for both science and for safety.
There's been
it's way too expensive to
repair. Yeah. There have been two accidents this year. First up was a couple of months back. One of the cables that supported the secondary dish broke.
I should say Arecibo is a disc type thing that's kind of built into the ground, and it's got like
an old crater.
Yeah, and it's actually a sinkhole. But yeah, the whole
sinkhole.
Area
that's right. Yeah,
the whole area is fascinating. It's just filled with these sinkholes. I've been there actually. That's one of the things that's so heartbreaking is I actually had a chance to go to Arecibo. But with the massive, I think it's a 300-meter dish, they've got the cradle above it, and it's suspended by 3 wires. And suffice to say, with a combination of age and tropical storms, they have snapped. The whole thing came down, smashed all the instruments, smashed the dish, and it's going to be so unsafe to rebuild it that it's going to be cheaper to decommission it and try and fund a new one.
Yeah,
basically at this point.
Was that filmed? Was a James Bond movie filmed there?
Lots of movies have been filmed there.
Yep. Yeah. It was. I can't remember which one, but I'm pretty sure it was a Pierce Brosnan one.
Yeah, GoldenEye. That was my childhood playing that.
Yeah.
Slaps play odd job.
I mean, it was disappointing when the first accident happened, when the first cable broke and it tore through the edge of it. It was like, oh, that's dreadful. And they had already got people in to plan how they were going to repair it and recommission it. And in the middle of them doing that second cable broke, and a whole large section of the top receiver fell through the base, basically. And they're like, well, this isn't safe anymore. We can't possibly repair this. It's too dangerous and too expensive.
If you want a quick recap of it, Scott Manley did a really good five days, I think it was 5 to 8 minutes, like in a YouTube video thing, kind of summarizing it. It's a big tragedy that
it's completely heartbreaking for anybody who's into astronomy at all. It's just like
it sent the SETI signal. And it received and it's received all those signals. It's the iconic radio.
Yeah, that's where the wow signal was received.
Mm-hmm.
Was Arecibo.
So. We got all the way up to J.
At least they'll be able to. So they're rebuilding it, aren't they?
No, that's the thing. Because of the amount of money that's going into it and budget cutbacks, they just didn't have the funding They barely had the funding to maintain it. So
that makes sense. Like,
the current economy of Puerto Rico right now, it's like when I was in Puerto Rico, this was in 2017, I think. and I was in the capital, San Juan. They didn't have a tropical storm or anything come through, but in the downtown, they were saying about half the time the water didn't work. And about half the time I was there, the water didn't work. Like, cafes had to close down because they couldn't make coffee because they couldn't turn on faucets. Like, it was bad. Like, the infrastructure down there is just terrible. And to think that they have to maintain that other infrastructure as well. On top of that, it's just...
Yeah, because America likes to do...
We're getting the raw prawn, as they say.
Having said that, the radio telescopes have changed a lot since Arecibo was built, and we tend to use telescope arrays now rather than just huge, great big telescopes. So it is very possible to build other facilities that have more modern technology, are more manageable and more maintainable than Arecibo in other locations where there's more better economies that can manage them. So whilst it's a huge hit for us, and it's such a shame because by decommissioning they're going to pull the whole thing apart, so it won't even be something you can go and look at anymore. It's just considering how because it's iconic.
They do have other facilities there, though. They have a LiDAR facility, I think, but so they're going to be doing some science, but who knows?
It's not the same.
Trust America to do that.
But to a large extent, as soon as anyone thinks of big iconic dishes for radio telescopes, Arecibo is what comes to most people's minds, because even if they don't know that's what it's called, people have seen it. It is being used in so many movies that, probably it and Jodrell Bank are the two main ones that people could recall from memory of what they look like, because they're iconic. So.
Parks?
I am Parks, yeah.
Parks is pretty iconic.
Yeah, Parks is pretty iconic too. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there, and I've actually been inside the telescope for that one, as well as one of the other radio arrays. I can't remember. I think it's the Australian radio array. And I've been inside one of the telescopes there where they weren't using it. And the Parks one, I know the Arecibo is about 300 meters across. This one, Parks, obviously much smaller. But the whole telescope itself is not actually attached to the tower it's on. It just sits on top of it like a hat. So when the weather gets bad, they actually have to rotate it up into a sitting position so it's sitting evenly, and they have to turn it off. Because if it's on its side when you get a really big storm coming through, the actual antenna can get blown off.
Wow. I've been to Parks, but I was only very, very young, so I can't remember it very well. But I remember going to Parks and having a bit of a geek out because I was really interested in astronomy.
Yeah, well, I went with the uni, and the person who took us, I was doing a special project with the uni, so a group of us went. She was the professor who knew some of the workers at a few of these places and I think had worked at a couple of the observatories. So we got like a full inside tour. We got to go around and we were hearing stories. And they were telling us though with Parks how they accidentally, they detected what they thought was this impressive signal coming from somewhere inside our galaxy, and these random spikes in radiation that they'd pick up, and they had no idea where it was coming from. And it was amazing. They'd written several papers on it, and they're like, it's just this burst of microwaves coming through. Yeah. Until someone at the facility was like, I know it's not quite the right frequency, but should we check this isn't the microwave? Turns out even though the microwaves are meant to have safeties on, the old microwave facilities, if you open the door while it was still running, and there was a bit of a radiation leak while it shut down. And these radio telescopes are incredibly sensitive. So this entire phenomena that they had written papers, everything on, turned out to be the microwaves. But the people there at the facility were actually so proud of themselves because they figured it out scientifically. They went through all of the options and eliminated.
Well, and that's it, right? It's going through that process, and that's the real science that doesn't make the 5 o'clock news. The 5 o'clock news thing is, well, scientists found this, and you're like, wow, that's awesome. And then you look at it, it's like, nah, they just need to jiggle the cable and it turns out. Don't eat bacon. Bacon's bad.
Yeah, you can't. You actually have to. And then you have to turn off Wi-Fi as well around all these radio telescopes because they're that sensitive.
Well, that's why you have quiet zones around certain telescopes.
Yeah.
You have to,
they can actually tell if someone's running Wi-Fi because they're used to the signal that it produces.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they can use, if you want to get into the signal processing of it, they can basically just filter out that particular bandwidth. So, I mean, it limits anything they might see at that bandwidth, but it's very... It's one of the reasons why these things have to be so heavily regulated by, what is it, the FCC or whatever the hell it is.
It's
just because they need to know how to tune their lock-in amplifiers, basically.
It's one of the reasons why it's a serious consideration to build some remote observatories on the far side of the moon. Because then you've got the entire mass of the moon protecting you from radio signals and light from the Earth. Yeah. So
just don't bring microwave with you.
Yeah, don't bring a microwave.
Yeah.
But that's a trope too, because that happened. It's become a trope in some movies, like, oh damn, it was the, or comedies especially, you know, because oh yeah, damn, it was the microwave. Or
well, I mean, I remember there was a whole thing a few years back about superluminal particles. And it turned out that they just had to jiggle one of the fiber optic cables because the timing signal was off because of a misaligned fiber optic or something. It was just like, oh no, never mind. Physics is good. Keep going. False alarm.
Yeah, well, with the neutrinos.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of blew my mind was when I was hearing about LIGO is that wolves walking over the top of LIGO would trigger it. Like, that's how sensitive it was.
Yeah. I heard from someone who actually, I think they'd been there, had something to do with the programming. If you dropped a hammer, they could detect it. If you dropped a hammer anywhere in the facility, just once.
I was going to say, back when I was in grad school, a friend of mine was doing her master's thesis on fiber optic vibration sensors. And based on and I'm not going to get into it, but it has to do with the diffraction patterns and what have you. But they kept on coming up with this weird signal right around 5 hertz, which they could account for, this weird vibration. It's like, well, something's going wrong with the system. It turned out that we were in Hamilton, Ontario, steel town, and there was literally a steel factory downtown. It's the hammers banging the ground, causing the vibration about 5 kilometers away that they were picking up. It's like, oh, wow. Okay, it was working.
Wow.
Leo just asked, just said, I thought the lasers were contained in a vacuum chamber at LIGO.
Yes, it's picking up the vibrations in the ground.
Yeah.
So they transferred through to the whole system.
So this is why LIGO has 2 locations, and you have Virgo. What's the European one?
I get lost in the acronyms.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought no. LIGO had 2, but there's
LIGO has
another
2.
one that was built
there's one in Europe that starts with a V, Vigo or Virgo or something like that.
Probably Virgo.
And they all correlate. LIGO correlates its 2 data, plus they double check it with the European one as well. So basically, you have to rule out earthquakes between or mini tremors somewhere in the world, or any work that's done nearby, because the machines are so sensitive. I mean, the difference that they're detecting for gravity waves are about the diameter of an atom. So you can imagine.
Actually about I got that one. It's 1/10 of the width of a proton.
1/10 of the width of a proton. Sorry, yeah, you're right.
But the brilliant thing was, and it actually surprised a lot of the scientists just how accurate it was that the signal they detected when they finally, and it took them years to get all of those accounting for outside noise correct, that the signal was pretty much exactly what they expected.
Yeah.
And that was one of the brilliant things with it. It looked like and that was how one of the reasons they knew it wasn't noise was because it was so clearly it was so clear in terms of this is what the theory says, and we detected that signal and across both of them. I think the first couple weren't detected by Virgo. I don't think it was working at that point.
I went to a breakfast where they had like Brian, a lot of the Brians, not Brian May, Brian something. Anyway, they were just talking about what happened. It was just after the announcement of the gravitational waves, and what they said was, if you were to try and expand what they were looking for in like ways that we can imagine how thick the vibrations that they were looking for, it was like looking for a change in frequency. If you had started from the Earth to the edge of the solar system, a vibration the width of a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So that's how sensitive it needed to be, or something ridiculous, or maybe from the middle of the sun to the edge of the solar system. It was huge, and it was just the width of a piece of paper. So yeah, Brian Greene was in it as well. It was Breakfast with the Bryans. That I just remember because there were 3 of them, but unfortunately, not one of them was Brian Cox.
Yeah,
it's unfortunate.
It's amazing how precise some of this equipment has to be. I mean, they really recently upgraded LIGO with for the latest rounds of testing, which of course they had to stop because of COVID. The newest update to it included something they called a quantum buffer. I think it was the whole idea was to use. There was something in it to do with a layer of gas that works using quantum mechanics to provide an extra filter against small movements. So it's really weird. I was trying to read exactly how it worked the other day, and I'm like, that's odd.
Yeah, I don't think those words belong in that order. It just sounds like
no, it doesn't belong in that order. It is. Yeah. I can't remember exactly what they called it because it was a week or so ago. I was reading about it. I was like, oh my goodness, what?
I'm a bit out of it, but my bullshit alarm's taken over. So
yeah, no, it wasn't, but it's
I'm with you.
I don't know whether it was quantum buffer, but that's what my brain wants to say it was. But the word they used the word quantum in the name of it, and it basically used the reactions within a thin film. I can't remember whether it was a gas or something else.
Yeah,
that basically enables the LIGO to filter out certain types of movement that can occur by things that aren't gravitational waves, so it makes it easier on them from having to filter it out in the software.
Okay.
Later on,
so that kind of stuff, if you can get rid of it,
if you can get rid of it up front, it makes it a lot easier, a lot less processing afterwards. Yeah. So they came up with this weird thing that uses a particular property in quantum mechanics to act as a filter. Which is why LIGO in its second set has actually been able to detect more gravitational waves than it was in its first set of. Even though they had to cut the experiment short this time around because of COVID, they got more detections in the second set of testings because of those upgrades that they put in, and this was one of the primary ones. So I will.
I'll look into that.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar with it. It sounds.
It does sound really weird. Yeah, it sounds like something that somebody just said. It does. It reads like when I first looked at it. This thing you go. That sounds like Star Trek bullshit.
But the thing is, it's not completely outside the realm of feasibility, though, because admittedly, it's been a long time since I've done academic work in physics. But when you start looking at what they can do with optical interfaces and plasmons and phonon manipulation and with that sort of thing, quantum wells, like they can do some fascinating stuff in pretty short order. So, yeah. I remember I was going with that one, but I kind of trailed off.
Yeah.
So who's trying to stop us?
Yeah. So what they found was that because it shattered with the quantum noise of light, they had to put a filter in place to compensate for that, and they used the quantum properties of another medium to compensate for it. Like, you what?
I think we're going to need more questions because at this rate, I think between all of us, we're going to be hard to stump.
I do have a question, and this one is probably going to be best answered by Matt. Okay. Years and years ago, I can't, probably a decade ago, God, I was reading National Geographic, and they said that the universe might exist because it's a lower energy than it is for to exist than it does to not exist. So they were talking about how quantum particles jump in and out of existence.
Yeah. And
they said that the reason why they think the universe exists is that it's easier. It requires less energy to exist than it doesn't exist. Have you heard of that, Matt?
I've heard of something, very, very similar to that, where empty space, like a pure vacuum, is unstable. You can't get it because quantum mechanics does not like it. So you end up, with these virtual particles popping into existence and out of existence. And if you're thinking, how does that work? Isn't that a violation of, say, conservation of mass, conservation of energy? No, because not really. Because what happens is you end up with particles that are produced, like matter or antimatter, like they balance out. So you don't just get one, you get two or so at a time. It's how black holes radiate. You get two particles forming, and one of them manages to just form on the outside of the event horizon, so it can go off. So there is kind of an extension of that hypothesis that I wish I was slightly more familiar with, where the entire universe's total energy is actually zero.
Yeah.
So the universe is not a violation of that, and actually is almost an inevitability because, yes, empty space is unstable.
But there still is that problem that's still unresolved, though, about the unbalance of matter versus antimatter in our universe.
Yes.
So despite the fact that you're calling on these quantum things, and most people don't know about the that second uncertainty principle between energy and time, which is arguably the more important one. When you consider how many more microstates can possibly exist as opposed to nothing, it's simply like the universe just simply doesn't have it in terms of the way quantum mechanics works. It's why does something exist? Because it does and can.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already aware that at a quantum level, the universe is very much based on... I lost my headphone again. Is very much based on probability. So if you're looking... I mean, assuming what our assumptions with the Copenhagen interpretation are correct.
Yeah.
I'm making an assumption here.
I'm like, what am I allowed to do? Okay, I'll allow it.
Assuming the Copenhagen interpretation is correct, the universe is very based on probability.
Mm-hmm.
So, given that the probability of there being something rather than nothing, considering all the possibilities of there being something compared to nothing, you'd have to assume that from that alone, a universe or multiple universes should exist.
That reminds me of some of my thermodynamics classes.
Yeah.
Back in second year, we derived some of the thermodynamics for a room full of gas. And this goes into how you do a lot of physics, not just for like particles, but quantum mechanics as well. It's all about states, as Jen was getting at, and state is essentially how how something can exist. So if I have a particle and it can fit in two spots, I have kind of two states. It's oversimplifying it. Normally you talk about energy states. So you can either have an energy with no energy, or a particle with no energy, or a particle with some energy. Unfortunately, most systems have more than that. And you can extend this to where particles sit in a room. And even without getting into quantum mechanics, when you start dealing with a large room, there is a lot of gas particles, so a lot of ways you can arrange them, and things will tend to go towards the most random one, because there are more ways you can arrange that randomness than having them neatly stacked. And it got to the point where there were so many ways of doing it that if you had 10 to the 23 ways to arrange one particular setup for your room, that was a small enough number that you could dismiss it as 0. So when you deal with these probabilities for how the states feel like a universe, they're big numbers. And if 10 to the 23 is close to 0 when you're dealing with the size of a lecture theater for how you arrange the gas, if you're dealing with an entire universe, things get crazy. But as Chad mentioned, we still have a few problems, particularly with why the universe didn't annihilate itself.
As well.
I'm a through and through empiricist. I know what I know because I've seen what I've seen. I've done the Cavendish experiment. That's why I'm okay with the models. I've done the astronomy. That's why I'm okay with blah, blah, blah. So when it comes to how committed I am to any particular model, it really just is an explanation. It's a best explanation. But again, it doesn't fit everything. It's the best we have. So
to be fair, I'm not always okay with the Copenhagen interpretation anyway.
Well, that's
It'd be really interesting. It'd be really interesting, stupid, this is stupid hypothesis, but it'd be funny to think that the universe was spinning before it even existed. And that could be why, I don't know, there's that mismatch. I don't know.
Well, it could very well be.
Weirder things happen.
Is there a net angular momentum to the universe? I don't know. How do you find that from the cosmic background?
I'm also not sure it's fair to say there was a before the universe.
I don't know the answer to that question. It's an interesting question. I can see Matt scratching his brain.
I'm not trying to think how you would.
He's like, is there a net angular momentum to the universe?
To the universe.
Get on that background.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think how much of the universe we'd need to be able to see before we could identify that.
It's the same question when you go, is the universe is the universe on a large scale curved or flat? Because our section of the universe, as far as we can tell, is apparently flat. But
it looks flat.
But
the answer
as we all know, arguing with flat earthers, depending on how big the round thing is that you're on, it can look flat and not be flat. So, depending on how big the universe is, it could quite possibly be round.
Flat earthers annoy the hell out of me.
Yeah.
I taught students how to use a sextant, for Christ's sakes. It's not difficult.
Leo, by the way, did the correction to me. Actually put in the thing that they're called quantum squeezes, what they use at LIGO to correct for that.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So,
Dog actually, Dog has a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Considering 5G is non-ionizing radiation wavelength, or I'm assuming that's saying
radiation,
at a non-ionizing wavelength, and is capable of 6G max and 54G at a millimeter waveband, why is it a conspiracy theory when sunlight alone is far worse?
I think I have the answer to this. Yeah.
I think we all have the same answer.
Yeah, it's called science illiteracy.
Yeah.
People are remarkably stupid.
Actually, I've got
ill-informed, I should say.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to my 92-year-old grandfather earlier this year. So when we had our lockdowns for COVID, I'd go down, we'd walk around. And one day we were just walking around, and his background is an electrical engineer. He graduated Sydney University, where I am, in 1950.
Yeah.
And he worked for installing the power lines that run through particularly rural New South Wales. And he was there at the age when they first put in the 330 kilovolt power lines, which was the highest voltage you'll get. And that was AC. And he said that everyone's panicking. What everyone was saying it would do to you was exactly what people are saying about 5G now. Because I was telling him about those weird conspiracy theories about causing disease. It's causing COVID. It's causing cancer. And he said it's the same. People have not changed. And I think Chad was right. A lot of it is scientific illiteracy. Though I was hearing from Dr. Carl a month or so ago that apparently a lot of that misinformation is coming out of Russia.
It is.
Yeah. Well,
even though they're pushing to build their own 5G network as well.
Yeah, but they would prefer to be competitors in the network when the infrastructure rolls out. So if they can stop that from happening now, then that's an economic incentive. That being said, they have no semiconductor infrastructure to speak of, so it's a moot point. It's really just kind of a fuck you to the States, as it were. But to get technical.
In relation to that, we had the same things when the LHC was coming online. The people were protesting and panicking. Oh, that you'll make a black hole or a strangelet or whatever, and then go and I mean, I'm like, hang on, stupid. The universe actually has things that happen in it that produce far larger amounts of energy than what we can possibly do in the Large Hadron Collider. Astrophysical jets coming out of black holes do these combinations all the frickin' time with way more energy densities than we could ever manage, and they haven't destroyed the universe.
I was sort of actually hoping they produce a black hole because it would have been like, oh, physics and science, oh my god.
But aside from that, even if they did, it'd be a tiny little black hole that would just sink to the center of gravity. Yeah.
So it would evaporate before it got enough, before it sucked in enough matter to actually sustain itself.
Yeah. And like they're talking about being able to make a black hole that to power spaceships. Like this is like a crazy science fiction thing, but using
it's a great
radiation
idea.
Great idea. Very safe. Just don't enter.
Yeah, as long as your black hole stays suspended. One of the things about the universe, I think is quite fascinating. I did the maths back when I had to do astrophysics. One of the most efficient methods for generating energy is to drop things into a gravitational well.
Yeah.
So, of course, if you have a black hole as your power thing, you just drop stuff into it. And it can be your waste. It doesn't matter what it is. You just drop it in and you somehow convert that
it was one of the few bits of scientific babble in Star Trek that was right.
Step 3, profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, step 1, generate black hole. Step 2, throw stuff into it. Yeah. Step 3, profit.
Step profit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like nuclear fusion. It's always 50 years in the future. It's one of these things that we can't quite get figured out. It's it would be nice, but
yes, we know it's possible.
We got.
That's one of the reasons. I'm an experimentalist. I like.
Yes, we know fusion's possible. Do we actually know that fusion is possible to make at a energy profit?
Yes, because we've done it.
Has it been done at a profit?
Has it been done at a profit?
It has been done at a minor profit. One of the problems with the few places that have done it at a profit is the sustainability. They can't run it long enough to make it feasible.
Yeah, so in that case, you're not running at a profit. Are you? Because if you have to start the process again, it's not at a profit anymore.
Yeah. So. However, there is obviously a lot of work going into trying to get it to work. It looks like, and from my fairly limited understanding of this area, yes, it's possible. I think ITER even has been able to do it as well. They can run at a very slight net energy benefit. There was a big one a couple of years ago that came out of China where they're like, yes, we've done it. We've got energy positive. And then when you look at it, they'd missed out a lot of their inputs. They're just done fundamental inside the reactor or something. They'd missed a bit.
Plus, you don't only have to have energy profit. You have to have energy production profit. I mean, you might get more energy
what we
out
haven't
of
got to.
Yeah, and so I'm not even sure if we can using the approaches we're using because.
Well, that's why we have to keep looking at them and then they're trying to improve them. Yeah. In fact, one of my professors from first year, his PhD was theoretical, but it was on how do you protect the walls of a fusion reactor from expanding? Because the amount of radiation that comes off these actually smacks into particles in like the metal and sends the nuclei moving and they bounce around, end up somewhere else, and you end up with the walls sometimes expanding by about 40%. So you put heavier atoms in there to bounce them back into place. It's actually really cool. But yeah, there's a lot of problems with it. It looks like it's possible, but we just, again, it's like our previous one with the black hole.
I mean, anyone who says it's in the next 5 to 10 years doesn't actually know what they're talking about because it is a long way off.
Yeah, they've been 50 saying years. That for several decades.
Yeah. And it's just not the engineering to actually get to an energy profit on a fusion is just insane. And when they're talking about energy profit, they're talking about, oh yeah, we actually produced more energy than we put in. Yeah, but you didn't get that energy out in any usable form. A tokamak does not have a good system for getting the energy out in a way we can use it.
I mean, my favorite one is with the big laser.
If they did have a surplus, they would be able to, though. To be fair,
I think they would.
If they had a surplus, I'm sure they'd find a place to stick the screwdriver.
Oh, I mean, I agree, but I think you'd have to have a significant amount of surplus.
Yeah.
A small amount's not going to cut it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And that's why we've just got to lean into fission. I mean, there's no getting around it. It's out there, it's radiating, may as well do it inside of a tank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I am, so...
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Why aren't we using it? It's still less polluting than anything else, apart from natural.
Well, one of the things...
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that just the amount of misinformation that's out there, because there are so many people that hear the word nuclear and they panic. Or I mean, even in Australia, there just seems to be something ridiculous. Here. We do not want nuclear power anywhere. We've got, like in New South Wales, we've got one reactor. And because it's a medical reactor, I think people tolerate a bit better for medical medicine and research. And people don't understand that. It's like some people don't want it because it's a nuclear reactor. I'm like, yeah, but we still need all those isotopes that it generates for medicine. We would have to ship them in and then drive them around the country.
Yeah.
So you're still having to drive around with all the radiation sources.
Because there's a lot of... there's very little information given about nuclear energy, but a lot given about nuclear weapons in school.
Yeah.
And
Chernobyl.
It's all...
Yes, and no.
You get taught,
as a physics teacher, I teach it in school, so I know how much is in school. I know that the history teachers spend more time on the nuclear bomb than the nuclear reactor, but I spend probably twice as much time on nuclear fission as I do on controlled nuclear fission as opposed to uncontrolled.
I don't.
Because specifically, one of the things we do in Canada is there's this particular reactor design that is related that uses heavy water, the CANDU reactor, and it's basically uses all but unrefined uranium. You just stick it in the heavy water tank and off you go. It's non-nuclear weapons grade uranium technologies there. As far as I'm concerned, take it and fix the problems. It's just a matter of infrastructure at this point.
And modern reactors reburn their fuel anyway, so you're actually getting into even lower levels of radiation from them. So and a lot less waste.
They can be converted. I think they can be converted to thorium, but I'd have to check that out.
Thorium's
I think you're correct. That sounds familiar, but again, we should check.
It's the CANDU reactor. Literally,
thorium is the thing that we always use thorium a lot in equations relating to fission in physics at A level. So I would imagine that's probably correct. But when I said the education thing, it is that we talked in several different subjects about Chernobyl, including geography and shit. And then I did higher level science, but the people doing lower level science, when I looked through the spec for what they were covering, covered a lot less of fission than we did. And so for the people who are higher educated, that's fine, but for the people who aren't doing science as a subject,
exactly, they just hear the negatives. Exactly,
yeah.
So it's all well and good for people like me who understand and have done physics all the way up to the age of 18, but for people who don't, their opinion on it, and most of my friends' opinions on it, is that it's dangerous and bad.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Chernobyl is that they deliberately bypassed all the safety measures so that they could push the limits of the reactor.
Yeah,
and then things started to go wrong, so they wanted to shut it down. But when they shut it down, the coolant system was running off power from the reactor, which was one of many problems with Chernobyl. So as soon as they tried to shut it down or slow it down, the cooling pumps turned off. So the reactor started to overheat. So in a panic, they then wanted we got to start it again. So they lifted it up, but it couldn't. I might be a little off with the order, but then it started running again, but it wasn't keeping up, and it started overheating. So they decided shut the whole thing down, turn it off completely, But that was when they dropped all of the control rods back in. It disturbed everything, and I think that's when they had the blast that's fairly famous, or the fire. When the moderator, the graphite moderator, caught fire. And if anybody thinks that is how nuclear reactors are still built, where that can happen, they really need to. Yeah,
not
even close. No, they don't get it. And we're still taught about control rods in that way in the school system. We were taught out of a textbook from 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, one of the ways that America did it for a while, and it probably was more than America, and this is still fairly old for nuclear, was they actually attached all the control rods to an axe. So if things went horribly wrong and all the systems shut down, all they needed to do was grab the axe and hack the rope, and they'd kind of drop back in and it would shut the whole thing down. But again, Chernobyl was an old reactor even for the time that it went off.
Yeah,
that
it was built in the 50s, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the Soviet Union cut so many steps. If you want to look at how many steps, yeah, there it is. If you want to see how many steps that the Soviet Union might cut with a nuclear reactor, you should check out the story about the submarine, the K-19, I think it is. There's a movie about it, K-19, the Widowmaker, which is fairly accurate in terms of its portrayal of reactors.
As accurate as any movie is.
I'm always skeptical with movies, but as far as a movie goes, and from my understanding of things, it wasn't too bad. Of course, things are a bit dramatized, but it's not bad. But yeah, and Fukushima's the other one everyone seems to remember. But yeah, it was an old plant due to be decommissioned on a fault line that got hit by a tsunami.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at, say, Australia, we are one of the most, tectonically, we're one of the most stable continents. If you don't,
Same in Canada.
And if you ignore the northern half where we are prone to cyclones, so you stay like, say, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, we don't really get natural disasters that you could not defend against with a building. So, and our geology is incredibly stable for storing things underground. So we've got, like, Australia is very well suited to building them. We've already got all the uranium, and also thorium. Even if you're using and even if you're using enriched uranium, if you look at the enrichment you need for even the old type of nuclear reactors, it's nowhere near what you'd need for a bomb. Also, if you're using uranium in a nuclear reactor, you probably won't turn it into a bomb. Almost every nuclear bomb these days is plutonium based, and for that you do need special equipment on top of your regular reactor. You need very special centrifuges, as long as there isn't code to break them. A little reference there that some people might get.
Let's not get into centrifuge technology too much. So
that's going beyond my knowledge anyway.
The latest nuclear power plants. The latest nuclear power plants are impossible to melt down as well. Like the latest technology. So they use salt as a cooling. So what happens is once it gets to a certain temperature, I think what they have is salt water or something, and then if the water evaporates, the salt solidifies, and because it expands and pushes the rods apart, stopping the nuclear so they use salt.
Reducing the nuclear cross section for the reaction, technically. Basically spreading out so the neutrons don't hit you.
So if you don't know how nuclear energy works, basically it's you've got the point where it's like a self-sustaining reaction, where a nuclear gets hit, so a nucleus of a element gets hit, and it splits, and then that energy is released, as well as kinetic energy, where the two halves of the new atom nuclear core gets sprung away, and it hits another one, and it's just this chain reaction of it just hit, just like those balls that sort of the Newtonian balls that you see in the desk, they move across like that. Those things. It's basically organized. Like that.
Now my nephew got a hold of this, so it's not quite going to work, but
and those And that's how nuclear fission works and produces energy, and it's very, very hot. So when something melts down, that's why it gets really hot, is because of that energy being put off by the breaking apart of the nucleus. So when you have a rod, it's not big enough. There's not enough density of the splitting atoms to be able to maintain that fission. But if you put the two rods together, then they can maintain that fission, because there's enough of those decaying atoms to create that energy. So that's why it's pretty safe. As soon as the rods get separated, they lose that
critical mass.
That critical mass and chain reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing that people forget about with Chernobyl is Chernobyl was not a nuclear explosion. It was a steam explosion. So it was because the coolant system failed working. Oh yeah, it was a fucking nightmare. But it was not the reactor didn't go supercritical and explode as far as a nuclear explosion would go. The steam within the water within it turned to steam, and you had a steam explosion, and that's what distributed radioactive material. It was not a nuclear explosion. It still wasn't a case of an uncontrolled chain reaction within the reactor itself.
It was a dirty bomb.
It was a dirty bomb. It wasn't a nuclear.
Better way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yes. And the fact that it's still being taught at school, it does end up making people very afraid of nuclear power. And it is an important part of our history. It's a very big part of our history, but it shouldn't be taught in the way they should concentrate more on the fact that the Soviet Union did a bad. They shouldn't be talking about the fact that it exploded. They should be concentrating it, and then also within that history class, just go, actually, nuclear power is pretty safe.
Yeah. What's not safe is running.
But the problem is, in classes they have enough time to say nuclear power is bad, but they don't have enough time to say nuclear power is safe. I mean, they've got so much curriculum to plow through. They're just like, Chernobyl, bad. Soviet Union, bad. 1991, don't worry about it.
No. On top of that, most of those history teachers don't have a grounding in science either.
Yeah.
So,
and the issue with that is also that it's not only presented as a bad thing, but it's presented as the way that nuclear still is, and that it's presented with a lot of scare tactics about nuclear energy.
Yeah.
Mostly by people with interest in oil. But
or renewables.
And it's like in physics lesson, we were actually taught about how difficult it is to store the waste for that, but we weren't taught about updated safety measures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're told about the problem, but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and the latest nuclear power plants that they're talking about actually use spent rods from older people, older nuclear power plants. So they're recycling. They're using poorer quality nuclear material to produce the energy.
Recycling's good, even in a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, well, that's what newer reactors are like.
People were talking about how hard it is to protect from the nuclear waste, but I met someone. It was actually just randomly on a train. I was talking to one of my other science friends. I was back doing the undergrad degree. This other person decided to join in. He'd actually been to Fukushima plant before the disaster happened, and he was saying that just when you store the radioactive material underwater, because that's what they often do in the reactor, before they dispense of it properly, they'll leave it for a little while, just all the vats underwater. And he said, you can swim on the top of that water and you will not get zapped. So even just a small amount of water, as long as it's not moving and the particles aren't actually in the water, that's enough to protect you.
Oh god! Like when I was doing my grad studies in Hamilton, Ontario, at McMaster University, they actually have a 5 megawatt academic reactor, basically just a study reactor. but they also use it for making medical isotopes and that sort of thing. But because it's just part of the physics department I was in, it was just kind of like, hey, can I come in? They're like, yeah, sure. So going through the negative pressure system into the nuclear chamber, and you can actually you can actually book tours there if you just want to get in contact with somebody from the engineering physics department. But they'll take you right into the reactor. You can walk right across the bridge and stare down into the pool. I mean, you can actually see the core glowing with the Cherenkov radiation. It's fascinating.
I love Cherenkov radiation. It's
that's so cool.
It's so gorgeous.
The last thing you see before a nuclear explosion gets you.
Oh, see, actually, at one point, when I was nearish some nuclear power plants in, I think it might have been Bristol or Somerset, somewhere around there. When I was shown it, and it wasn't by any official people or anything, but the first thing everyone started discussing was how far the blast radius would be on that thing if it exploded. And that doesn't help the fact that that's kind of the environment people create as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, nuclear blasts are not as big as we think they are. People are, like you see in the movies that it's going to flatten a whole open city, but for a regular nuclear bomb, that's not actually the case. The middle of the city is going to be gone.
Yeah.
But they have it's not nearly as big. That's why they came up with the hydrogen bombs. So they wanted it to be bigger.
Little side note here. In terms of large explosions, the place that I'm from, Halifax. Have you ever heard of the Halifax explosion? It was the largest non-nuclear explosion ever, basically, until some recent thing in Chinese firework factory. Basically, two battleships during the First World War smashed into each other, and one was loaded to the gills with ammunition and gunpowder and various oils, and it launched a cannon from the ship about 6 kilometers inland. And it still sits there. It still sits there in the ground today, basically saying this is where the cannon landed from the Halifax explosion.
And because they had the magazines under the cannon, so it must have gone up and acted like.
Well, it wasn't like a rocket. Well, not only that, it was actually a commercial ship, unfortunately. But the commercial ship was just loaded with, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was some kind of nitric compound, basically a precursor to high explosive devices, to high explosive stuff. I mean, it by all likelihood should not have been, at all. It just should not have been. There's no reason to have that much explosive stuff in one place.
We have a couple of questions from Nerdy.
Yes.
I think one of them's towards Mero.
Yeah.
Either that or towards me.
These next munch breads.
No. In short, no.
No.
Sandra didn't, but
I might.
Short answer is no. Long answer, indirectly. If you feed a mouse bread before you kill it to feed the snake, or if the mouse has eaten bread before it gets eaten, then yes.
Indirectly.
Indirectly.
By proxy.
Yes. By proxy, yes. And actually that's how wolves used to get their vegetables and their herbage.
Eat a rabbit that hasn't fully digested its.
Yeah, they would hunt down a wheat. Yeah, a rabbit, or they would hunt down a herbivore like a deer or something, and they would eat the stomach contents of the deer, and that's how they would get their vegetables. And that's why a lot of dog meats end up having that you can buy at the supermarket have mixed in vegetables with it, because it's actually part of their diet. They actually have to have it. They're not like cats. Cats are obligate for carnivores. They can't really eat it. Cats don't do it, but dogs need their vegetables.
They're omnivores like us.
They are. Yeah. They lean more towards carnivores, but they do have some level of the herbage.
That's the bit that people don't tend to understand about us as we've evolved. We're We're a herbivore that also eats meat, which is why we can survive without it. But ideally, we do still need it because we have evolved to need it. So
yeah.
And so, the second... Oh, sorry, you were going to say?
No, there's going to be another question there, but as well. But
Sam,
you were going to say...
Oh. I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you can read it out, though.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yes. Can we use railguns to shoot radioactive waste into space?
No.
I was going to say, I guess we could in theory.
In theory, yes. Where we are with railgun technology right now, it's not even feasible to put it on a nuclear-powered battle cruiser on the oceans. Yeah. So railgun technology is just not there in terms of sustainability and in terms of projectiles. That being said, the radioactive waste likely doesn't have the electronic properties necessary to be the projectile, which is another problem entirely.
Yes.
So, long answer, that. Short answer, no.
Yeah. And I mean, the ultimate answer there is of course, why would you do this? I mean, the amount of energy required to shoot it so it would end up not in orbit is not great. So this thing's going to decline in orbit and then burn up in the atmosphere and distribute the radiation across the planet, which is exactly why we don't do that.
You're assuming that we're not launching it out of the whole solar system, though. I mean.
But I mean, the energy requirements to launch out of the solar system are insane. Yeah, but getting out of the gravity well is the hard part in the first place.
Yeah. Yes. But if you're going to get out, you may as well.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, make it somebody else's problem.
To dial it up to 11.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying.
So you can't actually put something in orbit by launching it from the ground. You cannot fire satellites into space. That's why we need rockets. You need to keep applying energy until you're in orbit. And even then, sometimes for other reasons, you need more energy to keep it there. So unless this railgun can get this ridiculous shell that is assuming it's not burning up to 11.2 kilometers per second, then it's coming back down to us.
Yeah.
Because that's the escape velocity.
Is it 11.2 or 11.7? I never remember. I just remember it's a squiggle.
I think it's 0.2. I think it's 11.
I know it's 11 point squiggles. I remember.
11 point squiggles.
Well, very visual person.
Approximately, I like that.
Yeah.
Can anyone give an example of any odd-toed ungulate?
Odd-toed ungulates? Yes, actually, I can.
Oh,
weirdly.
Well done, Sam.
I don't know how or why I know this, but I know that is a trait belonging to the zebra and other animals too, but the zebra is the only one I know off the top of my head.
So wouldn't it also be a horse because it's got one? Or am I... No, I'm not very good with biology.
I know from what's it called? Zafrank. Horses give you the finger. They've got their hoof.
Homologically, if you want to say that one, homology. How would you say that?
Homology.
Homology.
No, but you have to do it. Homologically. At the end, though. That's
great word.
It's quite good.
So basically, they give you the finger.
Spell check if we typed it out, I'm sure.
So basically, the hoof is the nail, like our fingernail, and just the way it all works out. They're basically giving you the finger. That's what I know of.
And Nerdy's going back at you, Matt, over lasers on sharks.
No. I thought I explained that one fairly thoroughly.
I think you did.
What kind of lasers and what kind of shark?
Yes. See, I think we should put lasers on sharks, but I also think that should be CGI.
Yeah.
Do you think Sharknado will ever happen?
No. although having said that, I mean, you do get waterspouts that pick up all sorts of animals, but I don't see the shark surviving it.
Yeah.
It could still kill somebody, though.
Because it landed on them.
Yes, more because it landed on them.
If it hit them with sufficient velocity.
Yeah, you'd still die. You could still get bitten, I suppose, if it adjusted at right angle.
Its mouth could get shoved on your arm.
I'm just trying to imagine what the trajectory of a shark in a tornado would be. Like, would it actually get up to the top, or would it just kind of be flung out at relatively low altitude?
Probably,
depends how many sharks are in there as well.
They pick up a whole school of sharks, and except sharks don't travel in schools usually.
So to the surface, it'd be like a reef shark.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to pick up a school of great whites because they tend not to travel in schools. So
maybe I'd be more terrified of cookie cutters landing everywhere. The cookie cutter shark.
Yeah, no, they're terrifying. Those things.
How long?
They're so cute, and then they open their mouths.
Yeah. How long could a shark live in a tornado? I wouldn't expect it. It would depend on the shark, I suppose.
Probably only a few minutes at most.
Yeah.
Well, it's a question of how long can a shark live out of water. I mean, the tornado is incidental. I mean, that a cow is keeping him company is irrelevant to the shark's life.
Yeah, I mean, even though there's water in that, there's not enough for it to actually breathe.
Now, if it was in a water spout, though, would the tornado continue to keep the shark moist, its gills moist, thus allowing it to breathe?
I think the fast flow of the water...
But if the shark's mouth is
pressure
open,
too low for it to absorb oxygen.
Wouldn't it tear its gills apart anyway?
But if you've got the shark's mouth open, the shark's mouth is open. Just stick with me for a second. The shark's mouth is open. But because the shark has such inertia, it's not going to pick up, so the water's going to come at it faster. So it can easily go through the mouth and through the gills. I don't see a problem here.
So if anything, the gills apart?
No, but the shark's going to be blown in the same direction as the water.
I would argue that tornado sharks live longer.
See, I would actually think that a tornado shark would die quite quickly from other objects in the tornado harming it.
They're going the same way as the shark. No problem.
Not necessarily. If it because of wind resistance, the smaller things can go faster than longer ones. Yeah, you know.
That's true, and that was my water argument.
Yeah.
Fair point. Full circle.
Who wants to test this?
Point retracted.
If you can somehow get an experiment like that, that would be impressive.
Let's not hurt some sharks.
I
or any fish for that matter.
I don't think that
just some angry sea bass.
Yeah.
Couldn't it use its lasers to vaporize some water and breathe that? No, that's not how that works at all, nerdy.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. In fact, it doesn't work, so none of it's how it works.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I kind of have a question then that's following from this.
Yeah.
From the movies that try and present it seriously, what do you think is the worst science you've ever seen from a movie?
From any movie or from Sharknado movies?
No, any movie.
More serious movies, so not ones that are deliberately ridiculous, but ones that actually try and present science.
Cool.
Do you mean worst? Do you mean in the most dramatic way or in the most wrong way?
Most wrong way.
The core.
I could see that one. So for anyone who isn't familiar, and minor spoiler alert, though I won't give the ending away, what happens is somehow the government's doing weird tests and they start slowing the core's spinning down somehow. So they invent this little tunneler that's going to drill to the center of the Earth, set off some nukes and get the core spinning again. I don't think I need to explain much more to explain.
Excuse me, that's not how momentum works.
No, it's not
how anything works.
What about 2012 and its impossible neutrinos?
That was what was probably going to be my go-to.
Yeah.
The neutrinos are mutating.
Neutrinos
are mutating?
Yeah, this was the
that's the excuse they give it.
This is the science. The
neutrino oscillations is a completely different discussion.
Yeah,
I do biology and chemistry, and that is just taught. I have not seen this
That is
movie.
a line, yeah.
Mara, you need to watch this movie
because the neutrinos are mutating.
The neutrinos from the sun have mutated, and they are changing the temperature of the Earth's core. Now tell me the other thing that's wrong with that.
They shouldn't be interacting with the Earth's core.
Well, not enough anyway to make a difference.
Although to actually have enough neutrinos that we would actually really feel any of it, you need the sun to go supernova, which is another problem. Our sun is too small to go supernova and actually have its core collapse into a neutron star to give off all the neutrinos. So, for one, our sun does not give off enough neutrinos, and two, we don't detect them.
And they don't
you need to go through a light year's width of lead to interact with one lead.
To have more than a 99% chance of a neutrino being absorbed. Yeah, I've done those calculations. And that one's actually true.
No, actually, didn't you do that calculation last time we were talking with Dr. Carl? Didn't you actually do that on stream?
Yes, I think I did bring that one up. So you do cross-sectional area of interaction, and neutrinos are just so small that they just don't do enough.
I'm expecting one day they're going to do like a disaster movie based around dark energy or dark matter and like how it collapses or something.
See, I have 3 films that I'm kind of tied for things that irritate me most scientifically. So the Iron Man in the Avengers films, as well as various other things in the Iron Man films. Some of the inaccuracies in that annoy me, but what annoys me the most is when he says he's hacked into the mainframe and disabled their algorithms.
I remember that.
Then the gravity that occurs in Ender's Game, because it shouldn't work, and when they explain it shouldn't work and explain a theory as to how that could make it work, that doesn't work either.
Yeah.
And
can you remind me of that one again? No, I've read the book and seen the movie, but it was a while ago.
So the gravity shouldn't function the way it does. So their argument is that actually the battle rooms in the center with 0 gravity are not spinning, and then everything else outside it is spinning very fast. However, that doesn't function because the doors that are maintaining in one place in the center to let them into the room, let them through.
I don't know how I didn't notice that. I think I just was looking at the whole thing of like,
So there's that, and then there is, in the Artemis Fowl series, which is now a film as well, they have the equivalent of laser weapons, but they're not called that. They're called neutrino weapons. They fire large amounts of neutrinos to fry people.
If you want...
they've watched 20...
Yeah, I think they watched 2012.
They use mutated neutrinos, Sam. That's what they do.
And the nerdy question as well while we're on it. You can't fire neutrinos with a real railgun because you can't grab onto them. This is the whole point. You can't interact.
Yeah, they're not. They're neutral. They're neutrinos, not.
You can get an interaction, but the chance. Yeah, you can get an interaction, but the chance is so small. So when they first wanted to test for...
It's a weak interaction, though, isn't it? It's not electromagnetic.
No, I think it's a nuclear one.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like they don't have any property that can be harnessed in the way that he's talking about. Anyways, certainly no railgun. They don't have charge for that.
Yeah, so one of the early tests because they actually postulated that the energy from a supernova was actually coming from neutrinos, and there was enough of them that it blasted the sun outwards. But we were dealing with a ridiculous number of neutrinos for a supernova, and so what they want to do is set up a detector for neutrinos. Yeah, and this was a giant underground tank. They put it underground to avoid radiation just from the atmosphere. I'm trying to remember where.
It's called Snow. Sabrina.
Thanks. Yeah,
it was just down the road from Hamilton, right?
And it was this giant tank full of a chemical. And if the neutrino reacted with the
deuterium,
the deuterium. It was deuterated chloroform. Am I wrong?
I believe it was just heavy water because the heavy water was on loan from a place that contracts heavy water out for CANDU reactors. So it's kind of there's kind of a strange connection but heavy, because a heavy water plant actually used to be in Halifax, but it's not Halifax, Nova Scotia, but it's not anymore. So,
well,
we used to have a connection.
Yeah, and so what they did is they set this up to detect neutrinos, and they detected. So what you do is you then, at the end of the day, you flush all of that fluid through a detector, and you can look for a change in the water. And they detected 3 neutrinos
in a week.
Yes.
Yes.
So this thing,
just to double check, I understood that right. Because and that sounds about right. See, I'd heard a 7 number somewhere, but that might have been kind of a collection of a period or further down the line.
Yeah,
that
actually,
order of magnitude is
they expected 9 though, and they got 3. But the reason is apparently 3 different types of neutrinos, and the way they'd set their experiment up, they could only detect one of them. So it was actually exactly on line with what they thought, which gives you an idea that if you've got this supernova going off, one of the largest neutrino events you'll get in the universe, and we're trying to detect them, and we had this entire vat that detected 3, which, if you pay attention to how much radiation is just there, how much energy we get from the sun, there is no way any of those movies would provide enough energy to do anything.
Nope.
Also,
didn't Independence Day have equally atrocious computer science to a lot of films' graphs on physics?
I thought most of Independence Day was pretty ridiculous, because the size of those alien ships landing on the Earth would have destroyed us by knocking us out of orbit.
Yep.
Yeah, so many of them.
And also, the amount of energy I think it would take to get those ships here and then drill into our core would have wasted... I think that's it, isn't it? That would have wasted all our energy.
Were they going for the core? I think they just wanted to blow up, like, stuff that is on.
I thought they were stealing something. I thought they tried stealing something from us.
I think they were just psychopathic aliens that just wanted to wipe out the human civilization. Which
I think
not necessarily a bad idea.
I think it was just a literary device to go, space guy's bad. Insert conspiracy theory about how they're trying to train us to despise aliens here.
Yeah. Also, if we're on these ones for bad plot reasons for why the aliens are bad, I think Battle Los Angeles. Have any of you seen that one?
I've not.
It's not terrible.
I think.
Yeah. The idea
very high, but...
this is kind of minor. It's not actually that big to the plot line, because I think they wouldn't have even needed to have given a reason. I think these alien movies work perfectly if you just say they're here and they're shooting us. Don't give a reason. You don't need to know, because they're aliens.
They're not going to explain themselves. They're going to shoot.
So I don't think anyone looks great, but in this one, they kind of hint. I think it is Battle Los Angeles, that they're here to steal our water, and that they're trying to drain the sea level. I'm like, well, that's a waste.
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah. Why would you go to a populated planet to steal seawater when water is one of the most common compounds in the fucking universe?
Oxygen and hydrogen. There we go.
Oxygen and hydrogen makes it the most common compound.
And recycle the water that you've got.
Yeah. It's even the same when they start talking about carbon dioxide with certain things. It's like, now, there's your second most common fucking compound in the universe.
Talking about bad science, I just remembered, I don't know if this counts as an alien movie, science movie, because it's not, they don't really take themselves seriously. Pacific Rim.
Oh, Pacific, oh god.
It's a good movie if you don't want a serious movie. If you know, yes.
And Pacific
you can't take it seriously.
Pacific Rim Rising was even more that way.
Does anyone else get frustrated that sci-fi movies always have sound in space?
Yes!
Well, not always. There are some that do not.
Especially when the lasers make noises.
Oh! And lasers don't even make noises on Earth, let alone in space.
I can verify that. If your laser is making noise, you've got an electrical fault.
Yeah.
Right, hear me
I suppose if you had
hypothetically, you're an astronaut, and there's another astronaut not connected to anything, and they've got a gun. Now that gun's going to work in space because it actually has the oxidants right in the gunpowder or whatnot. So the chemistry's fine. The gun will work. So there's an explosion that then radiates out from that, and that explosion is just carbon dioxide in space. It's going to go in every direction,
and it'll dissipate very quickly.
That impact wave will eventually hit the other astronaut. Would that be audible?
I think
there is
very. I mean, you'll be in a
how
spacesuit.
strong it is.
It depends how close.
If it hit the spacesuit and there was sufficient matter, then you would hear a noise, but you're only going to hear it if there's sufficient matter. A bit like how, unless there's a lot of wind resistance, you don't hear the wind pressing against your face when you're wearing a mask.
But this is a case where the matter comes at you almost like a delta function, though, because it's such a sharp event.
Yeah,
it's not coming at
you
very
close.
I think you actually can hear explosions in space. I do think you can. It's clearly, well, as we were talking earlier, vacuum isn't a vacuum. There are always, so you can. I think you can hear explosions in space, but you can't hear the. You can't hear it. In the same way we would hear it on Earth, like it's
you'd be sensing a vibration.
Yes, you could sense a vibration, but you would not be hearing it. Yes,
and you'd be hearing the impact as opposed to the explosion as well.
Yeah,
I just wanted to be technical there because you could in principle pick that up with a microphone on a spacesuit. Because I'm just thinking about the person on the inside. So, like, technically,
if they had sensitive kit and were close enough that enough particles would hit it, yes.
Now, that being said, you don't have eardrums in space without a spacesuit. I understand that. So you're not hearing anything. But
if you have the spacesuit, you're definitely not hearing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're very quickly not hearing anything if you don't have the spacesuit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't Alien have something about space sucking them out or something in a ridiculous manner?
Alien Resurrection. God, that was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
I've not actually seen any of the Alien films, and I will probably keep it that way.
You're okay.
Alien 1 and 2 are pretty
That's
good.
the problem because catastrophic decompression doesn't happen the way that it's shown in movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not enough air pressure in the first place.
Also, planes, when someone shoots a window out and then all of a sudden half the plane explodes out and everyone gets sucked into the air.
Yeah. People don't realize that if you're exposed to space, then you get the bends in a hard way. You know, like...
Yeah, you don't
You've
explode.
got a few minutes, though.
No.
Yeah.
You actually have, I think, you'd get at least 3 or 4 minutes.
And then you
can be resuscitated.
You do not explode, but you will eventually freeze.
Yeah.
Eventually, yes, but I'm just talking about when the pressure is low enough that the nitrogen dissolved in your blood will actually start to form the gaseous stuff.
Yeah.
And again, the bends, literally the bends.
Yeah, your blood vessels will burst, but you don't explode.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying you will. I'm just saying I don't want one thing to happen to me amongst others.
My favourite for that is when I hear people going, and if you took a breath just before you went into space, your lungs would explode.
No, you'll open your mouth first. It'll come out your nose.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, your muscles are not strong enough to maintain an internal pressure that would burst you. And your eyes might have problems, but even they probably wouldn't, they wouldn't pop.
There's lots of
together. They'd end up with
lots of holes in the human body. There's lots of holes in the human body.
I say the top, but there isn't a top in space.
Oh, yeah, you might want to go to the bathroom before you step out into space.
Yeah.
Eddie Roden asked us, why haven't aliens contacted us yet? Or are we alone out here?
Because they've been watching us for the last few years.
Yeah,
they've got to 2020 and they're like,
no,
we're not going anywhere near that COVID shit.
I mean, look, if you were watching human history, and I love my history, I look back at it. I wouldn't want to contact us either.
There is a reason that there is a genre of posts and shit online called Humans are Space Orcs.
Yeah.
What's that?
Humans are Space Orcs is the ridiculous shit humans do.
Yeah.
Although sometimes it's Humans are Space Australians.
It's true. No, my hypothesis is that there's something called the Great Wall or something like that, and basically once there's a series of walls that biology has to overcome to get to intelligence like us. And one of the big ones is becoming multicellular. So anything that's not multicellular, like the reason why we've got prokaryotes and eukaryotes is because eukaryotes have organelles, like membrane-bound organelles in the cells. And one of the first ones that ever happened was either the mitochondria or the chlorophyll microbes infecting a larger microbe and producing its own energy. And that energy source produced by the smaller microbe allowed rapid evolution. So I think, and that's only happened twice. We had 3 billion years worth of single cell microbes colonizing the entirety of our planet, but that's 3 billion years of single cell organisms, and then all of a sudden, about 550 million odd years ago, multicellular organisms started to form.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the first ones that walls that we had to overcome. Another one that was just simply the production of life happening, is another one that we needed to overcome. And considering there's only 20 amino acids in our DNA, is kind of shows you how rare. I think what we will see if we become an interstellar species, I think we will find a significant number of planets that only have singular cells. I think the biggest leap for biology was to become multicellular, and then of course you have to understand that there's only one technologically advanced species of all the millions of species on the planet. There's only one that's technologically advanced enough to get to outside of our confines. And that took 3 billion years to evolve. So again, another one would be just the production of intelligence to the point of being able to become technologically advanced.
Because evolution doesn't tend towards intelligence. Intelligence is not a requirement of evolution.
No.
And isn't that one of the
pretty clear?
Isn't that one of the answers? Isn't that one of the answers to the Fermi paradox? Is that we're just fairly, like, relatively speaking, for the universe, we're fairly advanced fairly early on.
Yeah, that's also another one. We actually might be the first technological species in the universe.
Yeah, as arrogant as that may sound, I mean, our universe is 13 billion years old, and we think it will exist for several trillion years. We are right at the beginning of the universe.
Yeah,
and even if we say we aren't the first sentient sapient species, for example.
In at least our galaxy,
then even if we say we're not, it could be the case that they're not advanced enough to get to us or to communicate with us, or it could just be that they are still expanding themselves in such a way that they're not quite ready to come to us yet. Because
there are a couple of other filters as well.
True, including them looking at us and going, "These idiots."
Well, even if you ignore that filter, there's the filter that our current technology suggests that transmitting messages via radio waves is the best way to do it. It may not be. There may be other physics that we discover later that goes, oh, this actually is way better. And because we don't know that, and somebody's moved ahead of us, we wouldn't be able to detect their signals anyway. On top of that, radio waves dissipate fairly quickly, especially at the low powers that we use them. So if you get out beyond about 250 light years away from us, it's hard to tell the signals that we're sending out from background radiation. Well, they wouldn't see us anyway, because 250
background
years,
radiation.
We weren't doing it anyway.
Astronomy. Radio astronomy, background radiation is a huge problem. Actually, knowing what you're looking at, the amount of time that goes into programming just to look at even fairly large events that happened any decent distance. And as Nervardia was saying, life started more than 3 billion years ago. I think it's definitely 3.5 billion years. They think maybe now up to 3.8 billion years, which was longer than they expected because they didn't think the Earth could actually sustain life that long ago.
It's also possible that life's even older than that. I mean, it's conceivable that singular cells could form in space without even needing a planet. So panspermia is possibly a thing, but then for those cells to get the ability to become multi-cells is, as Mary said, very rare.
And so I was having a discussion with Jen. I think this wasn't on the air though, so it might be worth bringing up again. So life has been on this planet for what looks like about more than 3.5 billion years. And we've only had the technology to send and receive radio signals decently for about 100 years. Actually, I mean less than 100 years, because even in World War One, the idea of radio signals and sending voice was still very advanced. It wasn't until after World War One that the first clear voice signal, like live voice signal, was actually sent over the radio. So we've had less than 100 years out of 3.8 billion where we've been able to do that.
That's not even the first second of our planet. If you were going to
in terms of electromagnetic signals, we're just banging rocks together. Really, we're just barely making noise on a galactic scale.
Yeah. So I think it's not surprising we haven't found other life forms. I think it's more likely that life will just start. Simple life will start in lots of places, and we will just or we'll do. If we do find life, it'll end up being simple. But the chance of that other civilization being advanced like us and being around at the right time without them have annihilated each other,
or have developed a different technology
that they will actually
detect
about. Us. But by the time they reply, either us or them are gone.
Yeah. I mean at the rate we're going with global climate change and things like that, we probably will wipe ourselves out in the next 100 years if we don't do something about it.
Yes, SciShow did a really good video on the more likely ways the world to end, and some of them are like, so if global warming doesn't kill us, we might end up poisoning ourselves with carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, all these other lovely things. We might destroy the world ecosystem too far.
This is not ending the world. This is ending us. The world doesn't end with that. Even life on this planet will not end with that.
No. Life on this planet will go on. So I know a lot of people say, oh, no, we shouldn't care about the planet because the planet doesn't care about us. No. Yes, the planet is going to go on long before us, but we need to be very, very careful because the conditions that allow humans to survive are surprisingly fragile.
Humans are very fragile, and it's honestly surprising humans haven't died out with how stupid we are and how many situations we put ourselves in that don't meet the basic criteria we need.
You've got another evolution question, by the way, Mary.
Okay, and then I'll answer this, and then I'm going to have to go because I've got an appointment.
We might wind up anyway after this. Because we've been going an hour and a half.
Is it possible that life elsewhere could have evolved at a different rate? Well, that's
define rate.
Defined rate.
Because I would say rate of evolution here has been different over the years. It depends on pressures.
Well, that's when you start getting into things like punctuated equilibrium and things like that, right? So
so there's possibilities. Like I was reading something about a person who made a simulator, a watch simulator, and they would put in this is what we want. And it did like an evolution thing, and he found after the rendering took a week and a half to do, that as he went through the species, there were points where there were a new species evolved within 10 different generations. So depending on the pressures, the evolutionary pressure, like right now, for example, with climate change happening, there are some rapid speciations happening right now.
Yeah,
very rapid speciations happening right now.
Well, they have to survive with what we're doing to the environment.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be one of those that can rapidly evolve unless we make it happen to ourselves.
We're too numerous. We're too numerous to rapidly evolve
and too complex.
Mm-hmm.
We could effectively change ourselves, but
even with species that are reasonably complex, like insects or whatever. There's some rapid speciation happening right now. There was a speciation event that happened over the course of 30 years. I think, I can't remember where it is. It's an island in the middle of nowhere. So speciation can happen very quickly if you change the parameters of how it's living. So in regards to just a constant background rate of, let's just say, if you average it out, maybe we could have a species, a planet that mutates at a ridiculously fast rate. Maybe by ionizing radiation, maybe might help. Like if this planet surrounding a blue giant, for example, might then it might
red dwarf.
You might have or red dwarf, yeah.
Yeah. What I find quite interesting though there is that a lot of people seem to be almost like scared of new species evolving, and I think that two big reasons tend to be that people think that the world was kind of made for us and they don't like it changing because that means it won't be like it was made for us anymore. And then some people are concerned about
staying your kind,
just fear of the unknown and change being bad. And then some people are, and I imagine this is much like fewer people, but scared by the prospect that we might become not the most technologically advanced, which we won't. We have the tech that if humans are stupid enough to decide to, we could quash other sapient races as they appeared.
Can I just want to say something. For me, it's not that I'm worried or ever was worried about new species. It's the fact that if there are enough pressures that really push for these new species, a lot of other species are going to have to disappear. If you look at any mass extinction, yeah, you see rapid evolution, but most of the species don't survive. So if you want to look back at some of the times where kind of global warming was most likely the cause of the mass extinction, my go-to is the great, the Permian Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, where we lost 80 to 90% of all life off the planet of the Earth, and a lot of that was because was just the supercontinent at the time heated up, and the center became just like a big desert. And then of course this fed over into the seas. It was never new species that worried me. It was always, if we're putting that much pressure that we see rapid evolution, it's the damage we're going to do before those new species evolve.
And that's true. And the other thing, of course, is that humans evolved in these conditions, and so a rapid changing of those conditions is probably not great for us either.
No, and that's my whole point. It's those, and that's why it's so hard to get across to some people, because some people are like, oh, the planet's been changing the whole time, and it's like, yeah, not this fast.
Not this fast, yeah.
When it changes this fast,
us as a species,
you kill most things on the planet.
Because of our technologies, we will probably survive the mass extinction that we've created. There may be an awful lot less of us.
Yes,
a lot of us individually won't survive, but us as a species probably will. But that's not a good legacy to look at. The fact that, we survived it. No. After billions of people have died and lots of millions of species go extinct, saying we survived this when we fucking created it is not a good position to be in.
Yeah, one of the arguments I've heard.
Mary's got to go.
I've got to go.
Yeah, Mary's got to go. Thank you, Mary. Right. People go and check out Mary's video from earlier today. And please,
this is how you become a new atheist.
Yep.
See you later, everyone.
All right. Bye, Mary. Love you.
Bye.
Yeah, as I was saying, also, do definitely go check out Mary's earlier video. It was amazing.
It
was I have had debates with people who are climate change deniers in some sense of the word, and some of them I've said, well, we really should be putting more effort into trying to conserve all the animals, and they'll be like, why should we save the whales? Just let them die, they're not useful to us. That's the kind of argument. It's like, if we have that attitude, we're going to destroy so much of the environment that by the time you realize you've destroyed your own ecosystem and that those animals actually mattered, it's too late.
Yeah.
We cannot have that attitude. And also, what gives us the right to do that? What about future generations?
Hear me out for a second.
Yep.
What if we got rid of whales? Then we'd have a surplus of krill and algae, right?
But whales are their own
So
ecosystem as well.
I'm just thinking Soylent Yellow at this point.
So
I'm wondering.
we can live off the krill.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? Like, if we get rid of the whales, does that save us in some sense? So I'm wondering if we're competing with the whales for this Earth at the moment.
I would think.
I mean, how deep would we want to go down this rabbit hole, or are we wrapping up?
I would think that if we were to go down that rabbit hole, you could probably argue that the whales serve other purposes within the ecosystem that would cause the krill issues, and then us issues eating the krill.
And you've got to remember, if the whales
I've never had
disappear,
krill.
something else will evolve to take their place in the ecosystem, because that's how evolution works. So we'll probably end up with another super big shark again.
See, but I'm thinking lobsters taste good, crawdads taste great, krill must be fantastic. I mean, we're just. I mean,
but this is the thing. It's not necessarily the whales. Like, my argument,
I know.
The main argument I would have for saving individual species
being very
like
facetious.
that. Oh yeah, of course. Would be to preserve it for future generations. Like, what right would we have to kill off animals because of our
This is
our
the
negligence,
attitude that we
our
think
not
we're
caring
better.
for future generations that might. But if you're killing off the whales, that's more like a signal. It's like the canary in the coal mine. You've done a lot of damage to get there. So you've probably killed a lot of other things off. So it's not.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is that by the time you're killing off the whales, you've possibly gone past the point of no return in terms of the mass extinction. And the mass extinction, even if it doesn't kill off all of humanity, is likely to wipe out not only most of it, but also set us back technologically quite massively.
Well, part of the reasons for our explosion in technology is our extra population and our ways to communicate between each other. More of us means there's more likely to be more of us with a higher intellect and the ability to do science, and just by process of numbers alone, we progress faster. Yeah.
And because of this, you would not only be fucking over future generations seeing these species, you'd be fucking over future generations.
Also, we won't learn from it. If we survive it with that attitude, we don't learn from it, and we doom ourselves to make exactly the same mistakes again. So we have to make the effort now, so that we learn now that you need to make that effort.
Yeah, but humanity is very good at repeating history.
Oh, we are. We
have a surprisingly short memory.
But for an intelligent species, we're as dumb as shit.
My teacher literally had on her my history teacher literally had on her door, "Those who do not remember history are doomed to repeat it." And I was thinking about that yesterday, and just thinking about Trump. It's like it's not even and I was just thinking it's not even been 200 years since it's not even really been 100 years since we've finished dealing with the last fascist. And then America somehow has Trump.
Yeah.
Well, let's also keep in mind Rome was around. The Roman Empire was around for 1,000 years too, right? So, however you look back on history, there's always going to be bad guys, and you're going to be one of them somehow, or an enabler because you existed.
This isn't the first time we've fucked things up, as our species has fucked things up for other things. I mean, we've constantly done this over and over again. This is the first time we've done it on a planetary scale.
Isn't it something like everywhere humans have gone throughout our history? And in early history, a part of it was also linked to climate change, particularly coming out of interglacial periods, so during the Ice Age. Yes, that's one of the ones I'm thinking. I think for like mammal species or like larger animals, we have killed like more than half of everything we've come across.
Yeah,
that would not surprise me, and we probably have murdered thousands of species without even noticing, just by our presence of having chain effects on ecosystems that we don't understand yet.
Oh yeah, we only noticed the animals that we're paying attention to. I mean, everything that's disappeared that we never measured is gone. I mean, that's just history at this point.
Yeah, and I think that
unknown
humans not only don't learn from their mistakes, but humans learn to do them more dramatically.
Yeah.
Yes. But also, when you were talking about fascism, didn't around World War II America also have problems with fascism?
Yeah.
They did overcome them.
They've always been a problem. Basically, they only got into it because historical ties to the UK and monetary reasons behind the UK. I mean, they're just as fascist as anybody else.
Yeah, that was partially our fault. Sorry.
Like America's always been that way in some sense. This is our land. We're going to take over what we want. It hasn't been anybody's problems except the Native Americans, and they really haven't had much of a platform on the global stage. So we haven't really heard much about the imperialism that's gone on, but they're no better than Russia in terms of moving westward. I mean, Moscow has no business being next to South Korea, as far as I'm concerned. They can't possibly be culturally the same. It's clearly just a political land grab, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I am also of the opinion that countries are a stupid idea.
Yeah, one world economy would be so much better, but I don't see it happening in any of our lifetimes.
Yeah, people have a good habit of not agreeing.
We figure out the religion thing first. I think we're making progress. We can figure out the religion thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of the problem. Part of the problem comes from religion in that, and not all religions. I'll just highlight that not all religions have this problem, but it is a problem that came from religion.
Yes, I would like to gesture to dogmatic organized religion as probably the appropriate phrase.
Yeah, probably. That concept of we are special and set apart and therefore more important than everything else.
Yes.
We need. I think to go with what Sam was saying, you need dogmatism and you need organization.
Yeah.
So
anyone using the teleological argument.
Yeah. I wouldn't even go as far as to say that. I would say the problem is just saying there is something other than what I see. As soon as you accept that, then what is around you is no longer the important thing. As soon as you accept any kind of other. So regardless of what kind of religion you get into, as soon as you start talking about taking on axioms that are incorrect, then you are basically guaranteeing some false reasoning somewhere along the line.
I'm a bit that awkward fuck to argue the incorrectness point there because I'm a theist.
Fair.
But you're not really a traditional theist from what you've said.
I'm actually a very traditional theist. I'm a polytheist.
What I mean traditional, I mean
Christianity are brand spanking new. Those guys are infants in terms of religions.
That was more of what I was getting at, is that these days when you think theist, you think more like Muslim, Christian, etc., and you don't fall into that category. So, sorry, but I said traditional, I probably should have said mainstream.
Yeah, that's fair. I wouldn't even say Abrahamic because most Jews are actually fine, and a lot of Jews are atheistic.
Yeah, Jews still have that attitude that a lot of Jews still have that attitude that we're more important than the others, than everything else.
Well, but they're
not as bad as other groups.
Oh, I'll agree with that.
But any group with a label thinks that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the label. I mean, nobody takes on a label because they make themselves worse. It's like, I'm white, therefore I'm worse. It's, people adopt labels because it gives them something to be part of that's bigger than them. So it's...
So I think that when I say dogmatic organized religion, I do just, in my head, I'm going Christianity and Islam mainly.
Exactly. But we have to talk in generalizations. There's no getting around it. That's just how language works.
Well, I was thinking, shall we wind up? Because Matt probably has to get back to school and work.
Yes. I have to get back to my PhD.
And Sam probably needs some sleep.
What sleep? Can you eat it?
And it's probably heading towards sleep time for Chad as well. So
no, Sam, but if you don't get enough of it, you start hallucinating and you can get high.
Yeah.
I am high already, it's fine.
Challenge accepted.
Besides which, it's not even 2 a.m. yet, so it's early.
Okay. Well, if you guys want to keep going, I'm fine with that. But I'm just thinking people probably have other things to do.
Fair. I'm happy to, but I also acknowledge that other people probably need to do things.
Let's wrap.
Let's wrap.
Yeah. I've noticed if streams start getting too long, people don't watch streams.
People don't watch them. No.
So you got to keep them tight.
I like trying to keep things down under 2 hours usually, so an hour and a half is probably about right. But we were on a good conversation, so I didn't want to stop it. I was going to wrap up when Mero left, but I liked the conversation. Let's see. You released a video the other day, Matt.
I did release one a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it was on the laser.
Oh, you've got one coming up tonight. Sorry.
Yes, I have one coming out tonight. So about it was 8:30. So let me do just under 8 hours from now.
Yeah.
So if people want to join for that it's a bit different from my other videos. So,
but please go and sub to Matt. Everyone's links are down in the description. So please follow people or sub to them if they've got a YouTube channel. And go and watch Matt's video later today or tomorrow if you're in the US, because Matt's stuff's really good. What have you got happening, Sam?
So I have kind of concepts for a few different videos, kind of 4 or 5, but I've not actually started script writing for any of them yet, so I'm not going to say what my next one's going to be. Though the other day I did release one about necromancy in the Bible.
Yes, which took you about 3 weeks to get out. I shouldn't point fingers because I haven't put anything up apart from streams for a while. So.
Fair. So I will probably do something in a couple of weeks, but we'll see.
Awesome, brilliant. Chad, you haven't got a channel, have you?
I do not have a channel. I just basically live on Twitter. So,
but people should go and follow Sam on Twitter. And keep an eye out because he often appears on other people's streams and he's a wealth of knowledge and
See, I'm just a fucking nerd.
This fly is annoying me. Does it think I'm Trump or something?
Yeah, I saw that. The Pence fly.
It's Pence, that's right, it was Pence.
The Pence fly.
Singular fly, and it's buzzing around the screens and occasionally flying at me, and it's really frustrating.
I just noticed it before you said that, dude, which is the funny thing.
I know, I was sort of swishing it away before. I was going to try and squirt it earlier with some water, so it would bugger off. But yeah, okay. As for me, I will be doing another one of these Saturday night my time, which is midday-ish UK and Saturday morning US. I don't know if I'll do another midweek one that's for evening time US. I will discuss with people and see if anyone wants to be on to do another one of these, because they are always fun and I love the chats that we all have. I learn plenty, which is what I'm always aiming for out of this. I hope people in the chat learn stuff too. And I hope everybody who joins us in here learns some stuff from each other, because if we're not learning, there's something wrong. You should be trying to learn something new every day. And that's how... That's my take on it.
You're
learn
absolutely
something
right.
new every day.
Absolutely. Everything is interesting. That's my little motto.
Yeah.
If you don't understand why something's interesting, that's a personal problem. I mean, you just don't know enough about it to find it interesting.
Yeah.
I tend to look at it as everything can be interesting, but not everything is going to be interesting to everyone.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Personal choice / problem.
Yeah.
I look at it as a bonus when I don't find something interesting, because I already find too many goddamn things interesting.
Okay. So anyway, we've got people logging out now because they've realised we're ending and we're just talking. So I think we'll end it here. Thank you everyone who's still in the chat. Thank you to my wonderful guests. Thank you to Mero, who had to leave a bit before us, but this was all very awesome, and I hope to have you all on again sometime again soon. So that'd be amazing. So bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.